the beginning of another week, another time to do 55 minutes of business, and happens here on Business Incorporated. Here's what we have prepared for you. In Kenya, the tea factory auction was successful. They raised over R1 billion shillings. Ethiopia is looking to allow foreign-friendly nations, invest in their financial sector. Stability or not, how are small businesses coping with macroeconomic factors in Nigeria? Welcome to the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Start off from the global space as usual. Can tell you that oil prices fell for a fourth day on Monday on expectations of a Russia-Ukraine peace deal that could ease sanctions, disrupting supply flows, and on concerns that global tariff wars could slow economic growth and weaken energy demand. Look at the numbers for this morning. It's green, 0.21% at $74.90, while WTI is almost the same percent at $70.92 a barrel. And then we know, of course, that President Donald Trump is still busy this time around. I think his eyes is more on the Ukraine-Russia peace deal, but he said that he believes he could meet, that they could meet very soon with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. His comments come as the United States and Russia are preparing for initial talks in Saudi Arabia in the coming days. I bet some of them are even arriving in Saudi Arabia as we speak. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also said that Ukraine and Europe would be part of any real negotiations to end Moscow's war, signaling that United States talks with Russia this week were a chance to see how serious Putin is about making peace. Well, we're still in the global space now. Looking at metals, gold prices rose on Monday as the U.S. dollar weakened, with investors awaiting further details on United States President Donald Trump's tariff plans, which could escalate global trade tensions. Look at the numbers for now. Looking so green for most of them. Spot gold up 0.41%. 2,912. Looks like we're getting really close to 3,000 for spot gold. Same for most of them. US gold also 2,912. And then spot silver has also increased 0.27% at $32.94. Platinum is down 0.29%, but it's over $1,000 at this time. Palladium 0.12% in the green. $1,010.50. The dollar index hovered near a two-month low as traders assess recent weaker than expected U.S. economic data. Remember, the inflation numbers came out last week, not looking good. Whether it called a weaker dollar makes bullion less expensive for other currency holders, and the dollar's weakness and uncertainty around how Trump will engage with major trading partners in enforcing his trade tariff policy are supporting gold, according to traders. And that's the position at this time. Let's come to our continent now and see that the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, has visited Nigeria to assess the country's readiness to host the Africa Energy Bank that's set to open in Abuja later this year. Afreximbank and the African Petroleum Producers Organization are the two banks and two founding institutions of that energy bank. The bank's initial $5 billion capitalization is to be funded by the 18 APPO member states, that has Algeria, Angola, Benin, Cameroon, Chad, Ghana, Nigeria, among others, and they've contributed $83 million each. And these contributions, totaling $1.5 billion, will be matched by Afreximbank and APPO. We're still with Afrexim now. The federal government of Nigeria and Afreximbank have officially signed the host country agreement for the 32nd Afrexim annual meetings are set to take place in Abuja from June 25 to June 28, 2025. The 32nd edition in June is expected to be the largest gathering in the bank's annual meetings history, drawing over 6,000 delegates. And this will include heads of states, government officials, industry leaders, business executives, policymakers, academics, and respected experts and advisors from Africa, the Caribbean, and around the world.
The chance to host the world to the big conversations about African development, financing, African trade at a time when there's huge upheaval and withdrawal from the international rules-based world trading system. The African continent in particular, but the world in general, will be looking at what will be the response from Africa to this phenomenon. And so it will be a chance to talk about boosting domestic production in our countries. It will be an opportunity to talk about exporting amongst ourselves from the length and breadth of the continent of Africa, how to strengthen payment systems, logistics, transportation, air travel, and of course, that will include the prospects for non-oil exports, for small-scale industries to take advantage of technology to not only sell locally, but have the chance to sell internationally. And it will be focused on what Afreximbank and indeed the whole banking system can do to make it easier for that much economic activity to take place right down to the small and medium scale enterprise level.
Over the last 3 decades, Afreximbank has grown to become a consequential institution for the continent. In the last decade, it disbursed no less than $140 billion into the continent. And leveraged over $200 billion in its wake over the same period.
Now, in January 2025, African startups reached an impressive milestone, raising a record $289 million in funding. This marks a remarkable 240% increase from the $85 million raised just a year ago. That was in January 2024. Top investors believe that this feat can be continued as startups in Africa are bright spots. According to Isaac Marshall, investor at TLG Capital, African startups should focus on solving global problems. He was a guest on Business Morning earlier today.
Growing revenue to solve a problem, and then they get acquired by one of the large tech players, right? That's typically how things play out in the West, in the United States in particular, with the startup scene, which is really the main startup scene globally, when you look at just size. In Africa, the dynamic is a little bit different. Exits are a lot tougher. You have money point, you have time, but these are relatively rare situations. Most startups don't have the destiny that Money Point or the destiny that Time or MNT has had. And so I think in Africa, the name of the game is profitability and the name of the game is surviving. If you can demonstrate that you can solve a problem, don't try to scale too quickly. All the time I see fintech companies that are doing lending businesses that grow too fast, too quickly, and they start facing large non-performance, they start burning through money. This is a very challenging model. I think the name of the game in Africa is, there's this saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. I think the name of the game in Africa is, if you want to go farther, don't burn money. Don't focus on profitability, focus on keeping the business alive, because there aren't that many competitors. And so if you can stay alive in the market for longer, then you can end up owning the market and you can end up providing solutions that are needed to a lot of customers. But the critical thing is profitability and keeping the business going.
Now, the Nigerian Communications Commission has officially launched the National Broadband Alliance for Nigeria, NBAN. That's a policy initiative that's set to expand internet access nationwide. The initiative targets key sectors, including schools, healthcare facilities, religious centers, and markets. And they say this is to create a sustainable model for widespread broadband adoption. Let's find out how the subnationals are keen into this. For this afternoon, we'll focus on Zamfara State, as we have the Executive Secretary, Zamfara Information Technology and Development Agency, Dr. Habib Gajam. Dr. Gajam, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Great. So you were at this official launch, a launch that happened in Lagos of NBAN. Tell me, what are the prospects that you see as a state in this? Where do you key into this broadband plan by the federal government?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, the National Broadband Alliance for Nigeria aims to bring in relevant stakeholders from across the country to collaborate and see how we can have a framework that facilitates broadband penetration, not just in the urban areas, but across unserved and underserved communities across the country. Now, for us as a state government, this actually will not have happened, at a better time, because we already have a plan in place to expand our communications and digital infrastructure, which is in line with the administration of His Excellency Governor Dauda Lawal's vision of, developing the ICT sector in the state. We recognize the very critical role that the infrastructure plays in expanding the digital economy sector in Zamfara State. And that is the reason why we are keen into this alliance. And we also have facilitated and drafted several policies that will attract investment in the fiber infrastructure. I'll give you a few examples. We have waived off right-of-way charges for telecom companies who are willing to do business in Zamfara State to come and invest. We are charging 0 naira per linear meter. We have also developed the draft policy for the Dig Once policy for Zamfara State. I don't think you have many other states that have actually done that. We have gone ahead to do that, to have a shared infrastructure, in fiber, in electricity, so that you can have a uniform duct. So every company, every fiber company that is willing to do business in Zamfara State, whether metropolitan or the backbone, they will have to follow a certain regulation and requirement that allows for sharing of infrastructure, because we are doing a lot of projects. The urban renewal program is ongoing, and we don't want to be, destroying already existing infrastructure in terms of roads and buildings. So that framework is in place, and this falls in line with the National Broadband Alliance for Nigeria.
So you talked about collaborators, and obviously the NBAN is about collaboration between different parties. Who are your partners in this? I'm just curious to know, this framework you're talking about, are people already connected to it? Is it just a vision still in the paper and all?
No, it's not just in the pipeline. So we are currently collaborating with a metropolitan network provider, which is Lagos-based. We have mapped out about 28 to 30 kilometers of fiber routes across the state capital. The target is to connect all government agencies, all public institutions, with uninterrupted internet access. And that is in line with our overall vision of deploying electronic governance platforms, so that we try and move faster than the rate we are in terms of removing certain bureaucratic bottlenecks that hinder the business of governance in Zamfara State. We are also, at the moment, we are connecting the government house, the state assembly, the state secretariat, the judiciary, other key public institutions like the specialist hospital, the Board of Internal Revenue, as well as the School of Nursing within Gusau Metropolis. This is just the first phase of the project, which is about 10 kilometers, and the rest of them will follow suit as soon as we finish this one. Beyond that, we are also collaborating with other telecom technology companies to bring network coverage to underserved and unserved communities, which ultimately or consequently will lead to an increase in financial activities and transactions across rural areas.
So, I hear you that once these public sectors are connected, supposed to ease work and then eventually attract the public sector, the private sector, beg your pardon. So I'm wondering, what's your strategy to attract the private sector? Because, even if you have this infrastructure that is working, you do need demand to be able to sustain it.
Yes, absolutely. You are right. So most of the projects that we have embarked on, we recognize that government cannot shoulder most of these responsibilities alone. So beyond just collaborating with public entities like the NCC, the Universal Services Provisions Fund, to ensure that we have more connections, across the state, we are also in another collaboration with BCN. We are still at the early stages of discussion, which is a backbone provider, to see how we can reach connectivity across not just the metropolis, but extended to other local government areas. Again, we are in discussion with several other last mile fiber companies to even, connect homes, fiber to businesses, and all of that. Ours as a government is to create the enabling environment that will facilitate and attract investment in this area. And we have done so very keenly and very strategically. And that is the reason why in this particular first phase I was talking about, there's a GSM village within the Gusau metropolis, which is a market for hardware and computer hardware and software, applications. We are also connecting them with uninterrupted internet access so that, they find it easier to transact, not just locally, but even internationally, from overseas.
All right, Dr. Gajam, I hope you can hear me. But, connecting them is one thing. But we do know that for things like this, broadband, the infrastructure is a shared infrastructure. So I wonder what plan Zamfara State has to have an edge against other states, because if something goes wrong at the national or at the center, obviously Zamfara would be affected as well as other states. So are there plans to, stand out as a state, even though it's a shared infrastructure?
So yeah, anyone familiar with how the telecom, sector works? It's an ecosystem. There's no island. You can't claim to be an island, on your own. So certainly you have to leverage, one, the federal government in terms of, keying into the relevant policies and programs that will bring, the desired results that you need in your state. That is one. And that is one of the key things that the federal government, is actually discussing with states, is to remove right-of-way charges for telecom companies. A lot of states are charging as high as 5,000, others 3,000. Before we came on board this administration, it was at 145 naira per linear meter. Now we have made it to 0. So that is a collaborative approach, because Zamfara state government wants to take full benefit and advantages of some of the federal government's program, like the National Broadband Alliance. If it's about 90,000 kilometers of fiber that is going to be laid, there are going to be considerations, for states that have the enabling environments, the right policies, the right frameworks that will support the deployment of this infrastructure without any hindrance. And again, the private sector is equally important. That is why we are spreading tentacles, across the board. We are not just collaborating with the federal government, we are collaborating with private sector companies. And within the Zamfara state itself, we are collaborating with local partners to see how we can develop that partnership ecosystem, because it's a chain. you can't claim to do things all alone by yourself. You have to rely on a service provider. You have to rely on an equipment supplier, equipment manufacturer. All of these things need to be, is like the big piece of the puzzle. You have to bring in the pieces together for you to have that desired outcome that you expect.
Another thing which is common is the issue of security, because even if you have this wonderful infrastructure there and it's available for adoption, businesses actually have to come there to do business. And we know that for a lot of businesses, individuals in the country now, a state that like Zamfara State, I mean, not even looking closely at it, but the fact that it's in the northern part of the country is a scare when it comes to security. So how do you handle that as a state government?
You're absolutely right. You know, the issue of security has lingered for quite some time, for over a decade now. And I think we have not had an administration that has tackled, that has faced this monster head on than what this administration is doing. First of all, we are not negotiating with any form of, criminality or bandits or kidnappers and all of that. And that is because the state is winning decisively to deal with these criminal elements. That is on one hand. On the other hand, it does not matter whether Zamfara State at the moment is doing much, much better than some states that are not experiencing, security issues when it comes to the development of ICT, and overall the telecom infrastructure. So our problems shouldn't define, who we are. Rather, they should embolden us to take, bold initiatives that will bring us out of the. And the governor has consistently talked about deploying technology and solving even the security issues. And I believe the state government, in collaboration with the relevant security forces, are doing exactly the same in terms of intelligence gathering, in terms of, sharing information. And we are winning massively in this fight. That is on one hand. On the other hand, despite all of these security challenges, we are recording a lot of successes. That is why you have companies actually getting interest in coming to Zamfara to invest in the fiber, business. So if we have companies that are interested in doing business with Zamfara State because of the favorable policies, because of the, frameworks that we have put in place that are incentivizing and attracting investment, then I think we are doing things right. And again, we have just benefited from the SABA program. Zamfara State, the last disbursement that was made, we had about $6 million US, and part of that incentive is the waiver of that right-of-way charges for telecom companies, which is DLI2, investment in fiber infrastructure. So the results are actually showing that despite the security challenges, Zamfara State is still coming out of this, strong, more determined, and I believe we are doing very, very much better than some of our peers that are not experiencing similar challenges that we are facing.
Because I was going to say, Dr. Gajam, that if you have technology, that should also make a difference in your battle against insecurity. If you have adopted, you have the infrastructure and the framework available. We should see a difference even in the fight against insecurity, because it's supposed to also help in that area.
You are absolutely right. So there are certain matters that are not for public consumption, especially because of the sensitive nature of operations. But what I can tell you is that at the moment we are working, to upgrade and equip our command and control center in the government house. The governor has already secured the buy-in of the governor because he recognizes that technology is important. Now, what this platform does is to report security incidents across the state. We call it the Tactical Security Reporting and Information Management System, where you have citizens actively reporting, because some of the problems that we face, you have communities and villages attacked, and then they go unreported until 24 hours or 48 hours later before the security forces are actually alerted. So what this platform intends to do is to use real-time data analytics to monitor security incidents across the state, particularly in hotspot areas. And that is the reason why citizens can actually pick up a phone. You don't even need a SIM card or a smartphone to do that. All you need to do is, dial 112. We're actually going to leverage NCC's toll line, which is 112. We have had that discussion with the management of the NCC, and they are willing to transfer that infrastructure to Zamfara state government so that we can route our calls to the command and control center and monitor and track every call that comes in. That is the first way to go. Intelligence is important, data is important. It will also help relevant, decision makers to arrive at, data-driven decisions about some of the decisions that they need to take, when confronting these security challenges. Again, like I mentioned, there is a lot of sensitive information that does not need to be divulged. But I believe our troops, the security forces, in active collaboration with the state government, with all the support from the state governor, are working harmoniously to bring an end to this. And we are winning the war. We are taking it to their villages and settlements. And we are also gathering intelligence about arms transport and all of that. Every day there is one, ambush or the other of some of these perpetrators transporting arms to their accomplices. So intelligence is important, and technology, you cannot discountenance the role of technology in all of this.
Yeah, obviously, and that's why the part of NBAN that talks about schools, being empowered with this infrastructure is also very important. What's the status of, schools getting this adoption, internet and all of that? What's the status at this time?
So just earlier today, we had a briefing with relevant stakeholders because we have an upcoming stakeholder engagement on the Zamfara digital literacy framework. We are inviting relevant stakeholders to come and share ideas on the draft document that we have produced. And we are inviting relevant federal government agencies like NIGCOMSAT, like the NCC, like NIDA, the Nigeria Data Protection Agency, to see how we can collaborate to bring that digital literacy framework to life. This framework typically has 4 strategic pillars. The first one is to ensure that all students at all levels of education are digitally literate before they graduate. And that includes providing the backbone infrastructure to make sure that there is internet connectivity. We have over 200 secondary schools at the moment. I had just finished a meeting with the Commissioner of Education. They are furnishing us with that data so that we can pilot the program once that framework is approved. And this will be in active collaboration with the Galaxy backbone in terms of fiber in urban and semi-urban centers where they have their points, and then the NAGCOMSAT, where we need to take internet to remote areas, leveraging on the satellite communication. That is the first strategic pillar. The second strategic pillar is to ensure that all our civil servants across local and state governments are also digitally literate, leveraging on the electronic governance infrastructure that we are setting up to make sure that we have done away with a lot of paperwork and files that hinder, that pose serious bureaucratic bottlenecks to the business of governance. Then, of course, the larger society as well. We are training different artisans. The target is to train 10,000 in the next 4 or 5 years. Entrepreneurs, petty traders, in one form of digital skill or the other, to ensure that they scale up their businesses. And then, of course, the last one is to create the budgetary line to support the implementation of this framework. So we are very deliberate in terms of what we need to do. We have a very clear strategy, and His Excellency, the Executive Governor, is very keen. ICT is one of his top priorities because he was a banker in his former life. He understands the critical role of IT in the delivery of services. So it couldn't have come at a better time. The question you have asked about the connectivity and schools, we are working with NIGCOMSAT. We are also working with the Digital Economy Department of the NCC to see how we can partner and promote digital literacy programs across all other sectors, not just in our schools, not just in the service. because we want an inclusive approach to this. You can't move and leave one sector behind and take a few others with you. So it is a holistic approach, and we are very, very deliberate about it.
All right, thank you so much, and we wish you the best, in this move that you have started. Dr. Habib Gajam, the Executive Secretary of Zamfara Information Technology and Development Agency.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we head to the market. Intraday numbers await you on the other side here on Business Incorporated. Stay with us. Welcome back to watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We head to the markets now to see intraday numbers. Well, unfortunately for the NGX, we've seen that continuous sustenance of the red color from the Valentine color. We closed on Valentine's Day with the Valentine color, and opening today again, it's a 0.02% down. 108,000 is still what we have. 108,034.50. There's still hope. We can still close green today, seeing that the intraday drop is just not so much. So hopefully we will get that back before the close of trade. For Johannesburg, it's also red 0.37% at 88,388.69. Look at other parts of the continent now. In Egypt, it's so slightly positive, so slight, 0.01%. Any move now, and we can have it get into the red. But we'll see at the close of trade. We'll see that tomorrow. For Nairobi Stock Exchange, Friday's close was very comfortable, and they're heading close to their resistance points. I wonder if I could call that 132. That's where they were before the drop started. So for Friday, they closed at 131.05. Let's leave Africa now, move to the Middle East, and we see Dubai is positive. At this time, 0.28%, 5,376.84. Abu Dhabi is on the flip side, more than 0.5% in the red, 9,574.53. Abu Dhabi is negative, as well as Saudi Arabia. Tadawul is down 0.53%, and Saudi Arabia is more than 1% in the red. At intraday, more than 1% in the red is what we have. And then we'll move to the United States. Just a little change. We're still holding a breath for what's going to happen with the tariffs. Spoke to Juliana, my colleague in the UK, about all of this 25% steel and aluminium tariff. UK and the US are supposed to be brothers or cousins or something like that. And so the markets and investors are waiting to see if there'll be a pronouncement to exempt any country from it. But the UK hasn't gotten that yet. And I think that's what's happening also to the market, because we see like a pause from the strong performance that was recorded on Friday. They're weighing the last global trade and inflation numbers and to see which way it will go. The three major averages. So there we see it there now. Dow Jones in the futures, this is the futures before the markets open, at 44,681 is green. S&P is also green. Nasdaq is also green. Remember this morning we did talk about DeepSeek download suspended in South Korea. That's like the second country that's pausing or suspending downloads of DeepSeek app in that country. So could it be meaning well or coming across as positive for Nasdaq, their competition? But we'll see. Time will tell. For now, that's what it's looking like. Let's move to Asia now and see what's happening in that market. The close of trade. The Nikkei is green. The Kospi is green. And then the Hang Seng is on the flip side, but still safe, I guess, at 0.02%. So the Nikkei is 0.06% green. Kospi is very comfortable looking there. It's trading higher, but they are also waiting a slew of central bank decisions. This week is going to be a busy one for the UK and it seems the Asian economy too. We saw the Japan GDP earlier today. We talked about that. It grew and it was positive expansion for the fourth quarter, beat analyst expectations. So I guess that's also feeding into that. Of course, expectedly, the Japanese yen expanded. So we saw all of that. Now, let's see other parts of Asia market. The Shanghai is also green. And, well, the Nifty 50 of India has gone down to what we were afraid of, which is the 22,000 level. But it's green, so perhaps it's on its way back up. Investors will try to take advantage of those drop in stock prices, and perhaps we'll see more of green for the markets from now, at least for this week, and see perhaps some recovery right there. All right, let's leave the markets now and give you some African news. Egypt's Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade, Hassan El Khatib, has met with Saudi Arabia's power chairman, Mohammed Abouyan, and they're discussing investment opportunities in Egypt's renewable energy sector. Minister El Khatib highlights strong Egypt-Saudi ties and recent progress in cooperation, praising the swift signing of a joint investment agreement. He reaffirms Egypt's commitment to create a favorable investment climate and has called for increased Saudi investment, noting Egypt's targets of generating 30 gigawatts for the national grid, including 10 gigawatts for renewables. And then he thanks the minister for supporting Saudi investment and commends Egypt's efforts to foster an attractive business environment. Still talking power, but now in Kenya. Kenya Power has recorded a new peak electricity demand of 2,316 megawatts, surpassing the previous record of 2,304 megawatts that was set on January 15. The company attributes this increase to ongoing grid upgrades and a rise in customer connections. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer Joseph Siro, in a statement formed today, said that the surge in demand follows a steady growth trend over the past 3 years, with a noticeable acceleration in the last 8 months. The company has invested significantly in improving the national grid with key infrastructure projects such as the Kumuka 2026 66 kV substation like a tracker, which has helped stabilize the grid. And we remember last week we did report that Kenya Power reported some profits, so they seem to be doing well in the last couple of days. But still in Kenya, the Mombasa tea auction generated 1.14 billion shilling after the sale of 4.3 million kilograms of tea sourced by 70 tea factories. The weekly sale was higher compared to last week's auction, which fetched 1.3 billion shilling after the sale of 5,148 kilograms. In the market, Ngere Tea Factory presented about 127,000 kgs of tea that fetched 40.7 million shillings after the auction of 96.966 kilograms factories in the West. And then also still on that, the KTDA holding chairman said that the factories are strict on production of quality tea, and that's fetching them higher prices at the auction. In Ethiopia now, that's where we're going to next, and the country has announced plans to permit foreign banks from friendly nations to invest in its financial sector, representing a significant shift in the country's banking policy. However, the highly anticipated bill, revised 2 months ago, is yet to be officially published. Under the newly adopted Banking Business Proclamation, international banks will be allowed to re-enter the Ethiopian market through various operating schemes. This proclamation, ratified by Parliament in mid-December 2023, includes key provisions aimed at enhancing the financial sector. The law will only take effect once it's published in the Nagarit Gazette, the official decree gazette, and detailed directives will be issued. According to Mamo Mureta, the governor of the National Bank of Ethiopia, this process could take anywhere from 3 months to a year. All right, now let's head to Berlin and see what's happening there at this time when the world is talking about peace in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. But Germany is getting closer to its snap election. That's also another big story coming from there. Next weekend, the country will elect its next government. And just a week out, Berlin learns of another budget shortfall. Is there an end to this? Lars Holzer joins us now with the details. Hi, Lars. Good afternoon. So what's the latest about this? You have your elections coming on, and now we are hearing about shortfalls, budget shortfalls.
Yes, exactly, Ini. Hi, and thanks for having me. This is really true. We are having a money problem here. The German government has discovered yet another budget hole, 3.5 billion missing. And here's the story how this happened. Over the last couple of years, the German government has paid out billions of euros in COVID relief funds as well as in subsidies to really give some relief from the energy crisis when we saw those energy prices rising. And of course, they've paid out billions. Now that it's all audited, they find out that they have overpaid here and there. So some of this money is flowing back to the government now. About 3 billion in energy relief funds, another 500 million in COVID relief funds. And the government was planning on putting these incoming funds into the 2025 budget until just now. A court said no, that is not possible, that is not legal. Now they have to take it out of the budget, and there you are with another gap of an additional 3.4 billion.
I wonder if they found a legal way to handle this. Any way out of this problem?
Not really, because in Germany there is a law that is well documented and we've often discussed it. It's called the debt brake. It says that the government cannot pick up any new debt or get into credit if there is not an emergency. Pretty much that means whatever you put into the budget, you have to finance it with the funds that are available. No new debt can be taken up, except, of course, in an emergency. And now if you think back of those for those last couple of years, COVID, the pandemic, that was an emergency. The energy crisis was seen as an emergency. But now with those funds coming back, we don't have an emergency. So that money has to be used to pay off existing debt. It can't just be spent otherwise. And now the only way really to get out of that is by changing that law, by putting in place a new policy and by allowing the government to pick up debt. Now, that's a tricky position to have right now, because the fight over the debt brake is actually what brought the still reigning government down and what is actually leading now to these snap elections that are coming up next Sunday. But economists at the same time are convinced that we need to get rid of the debt brake anyway, that we need to pick up new debt and invest it as investment in infrastructure on a massive scale is actually seen as the only viable way to get us out of an economic crisis that is still ongoing in Germany.
Yeah, so I wonder what the governments will do, change the law, and compromise. But we'll see in the coming days, Lars. Let's look at what investors are doing at this time.
They're having a pretty good time. This day in Frankfurt started pretty slow, Ini, but it has picked up steam. The DAX is up almost 1% at this point. I stumbled over one story that I want to quickly relay. One of the losing shares is Borussia Dortmund, one of the leading football teams, because they haven't been playing that well. They lost another game this weekend. And it's kind of interesting. Why are we talking about sports here? Because Borussia Dortmund is actually the only team in the league that is listed as a a publicly traded company at the stock market in Frankfurt. So they combined, and that's been going on for a couple of years now, sports and business. And so sometimes you're seeing these reactions. I do also want to point, however, to one big winner, and that would be Rheinmetall, which is the big German defense contractor. And of course, their gains of up to 10% today, that has a little bit to do with the Munich Security Conference that has just happened over the past weekend in Munich, where we are seeing, of course, the problems that the Trump government is bringing. They want to end the war in Russia. Nobody knows the terms by which this is set to be happening. Nobody knows what it will mean to Ukraine, what message it will send to Putin, if there is to be expected maybe more military action coming out of Russia in the next couple of years. But all these terrible stories are, of course, fertile ground for a defense contractor, and that company's shares are up 10%, as I said, almost, so they're the big winner today.
Yeah, always a winner and a loser. One party is losing and the other is thriving. I guess that's just a natural thing in life, Lars. Well, thank you so much for that.
Very true, Ini. Thank you.
All right, so there you have it. I mean, we're talking about ending the war, but I'm sure maybe perhaps the defense industry is saying, no, that's my source of revenue. Don't end it. But, I mean, the right thing has to be done, yeah. So I wonder what side Ladi is on. I know the cryptocurrency has been so unstable these days, but Ladi, I don't know if you want the war to end or not, because you're making money from the war, Ladi.
Crypto investors making money from the war, but remember one time, back then, risk assets were, rattled. And it did impact, the cryptocurrency market, too. But Bitcoin, gold, on the flip side,
gold is almost $3,000.
Almost $3,000, yeah. But digital gold, not doing as well. They really give a present, for Valentine to investors last week, just like the NGX.
Well, the NGX did,
yes,
and it's still giving up till today. Hopefully, by the close of trade, Valentine will be over.
Right, yeah, but here it's the true color of Valentine.
Yeah, that's cheating, Laddie.
It's red.
That's cheating here.
Yeah, but Ethereum's holding up quite well. I might say 1.91%, $2,700 for Ethereum, while the whole market is quite red, and that's according to Coin 360. Let's look at the sentiment in the market. How are investors feeling? Are they greedy? Or are they fearful? Okay, neutral, 51 points, smack in the middle. They're just lukewarm at this point. They don't know which direction Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptocurrencies are going. Let's look at the top headlines in the market. We're seeing trading volume that's dropped. There's a significant downturn, about 2.83% down. And Bitcoin's price, that's been fluctuating between $96,000 and $51 and $97,672. So it's been trading within a range, reflecting ongoing volatility there, but Ethereum is not looking so bad right there in the market. Then we see Italy's central bank, they're targeting crypto regulation. That's the securities regulator in Italy. They're discussing ways to put in place, proper safeguards against financial and cybersecurity risk in the crypto service sector. According to the governor of the Bank of Italy, he pointed out these efforts during the 31st ASEAN Forex Congress in February, just last week, stressing the need to manage risk tied to crypto assets such as money laundering and threats to financial stability. Then we also see the SEC in the U.S. They've agreed to halt fraud lawsuits against cryptocurrency mining company Geosin Mining and its executives. And definitely that might be pushed aside, for now, pending more investigation. All right, let's get a check on what's playing out with the market there. Talking about some technical analysis. We have Element Danbell, the founder, SaveYou AI. Hello, Element. Great to have you. Happy New Year.
Oh, hey, Lottie. Thank you for having me as always.
Right. So, I know you look at the charts a lot, and you can tell us, about oversold or overbought regions at this point. But tell me, what is the crystal ball telling you now about direction? Because I'm sure investors are wondering, is it time to go long or go short in the market right now?
I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of turbulence. And whenever you have turbulence, I don't know if you're taking a long flight, and you experience moments of turbulence, the first thing you tend to do is secure yourself. So that's what we see people doing now. People are securing themselves, and hence why you are seeing a lot of liquidation in the crypto market. People are moving their capital towards more traditional safe havens like gold, like the Swiss franc, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, in the short term, you are seeing people again bracing for impact, and I think that impact in the short term could be more of a downside. So it does look like we could see Bitcoin in particular potentially fall. I wouldn't say greatly below 90K, but you could see it around 89.
Right, and this year, do you see investors still, pouring funds into gold? And if that happens, what does that tell us about 2025?
I think a lot of people were overly optimistic coming into 2025, and rightly so. Of course, we saw Trump win in November, and of course the markets were absolutely rallying on that result. And of course, in the months that followed, a lot of uncertainty, especially surrounding what's happening in Ukraine now, of course, Palestine and Israel. So there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty, tariffs as well. So I think in terms of the markets, people again are moving back towards traditional safe havens, opposed to being optimistic with gold. Of course, last week as well, we saw David Sachs, the crypto czar, and AI czar actually in the US, coming out and saying they're hoping to have some regulation this year in terms of stable coins and how they should operate in the US. So there's still some optimistic sentiment in the market, but I think at the moment it's being overshadowed by everything else.
Right, and talking about AI, we can't go a day without talking about artificial intelligence. Now from the DeepSeek route of a few weeks ago. But what is AI really doing in the crypto industry? In your opinion, right now?
For the moment, you are seeing an increased amount of agents, AI agents, being used to deploy crypto tokens, pre-sales, ICOs, and this type of thing. But generally, on a personal, individual use case, I think people are and can use AI to a degree when it comes to analyzing potential opportunities. So I think it's more on that aspect. Of course, in the past, people have had trading bots, but I think the difference between bots and AI is with bots, you would have had to program the bots to a predetermined action. With AI, you have the ability to essentially have reinforcement learning as you go along. So I think people can use the AI to even criticize and critique their own portfolio and looking at new opportunities and things of that nature. So that's the main use case at the moment.
And do you see maybe AI reading the charts, better, at some point, giving really accurate direction on where price action might be going?
I think the difference between ourselves and AI is AI doesn't get tired. So AI has the ability to consistently look at the charts and trying to find nuance, whereas you and I may need a few espressos to have that level of concentration. So from that perspective, yes, but I think you can never discount the human element. So I think having AI with human in the loop to make, let's say, a final decision, or use the AI to give you a summary of what it believes is happening, and you take that bird's eye view and final decision. I think that would probably be a more suitable use case.
Right, and I can't get over some movies that I watch, about AI, and somehow AI gets self-aware and tries to take over the world. Do you have such fears?
Naturally, a lot of people, again, have been introduced to AI from that perspective. I think what you're seeing now, especially with Trump coming in and the team he's trying to assemble, David Sachs and a few of those guys coming from Silicon Valley, I think they do see the need for regulation. So I think the need for regulation, the need for human in the loop AI, opposed to AI essentially operating on its own accord. So as long as there's a human in the loop, I think that has the ability to bring great benefit while lowering the security risks.
All right, we'll keep tracking and see how it grows. Thank you so much, Element Dambo, founder, Savio AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I guess don't be afraid. Maybe AI will not take over your portfolio, at some point, maybe take over all your assets, but maybe not.
I always say that, AI is a program that a human being, puts together.
Right.
So I don't know how AI will take over the world when you even need a human being to write up the program.
Right.
That will make the AI
But if
function.
AI gets self-aware, who knows?
All right, Laddie, thank you. So that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for beginning this week with us. Remember, Business Morning is back to being an hour, and we have loads of information for you that you can relate with. So you don't want to miss it. 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then I'll be back 1 p.m. But today, we'll see if the NGX will lose the Valentine color, hopefully.